Is going for lunch an allowable expense for tax purposes? Hi, I'm Kimberly Shapcott, qualified chartered accountant, property investor and entrepreneur. Let's sit down and have a chat. Going for lunch, a great activity. It's something that we all need to have each day. So can we now expense that through our property business? Now this is very much a question of what is the purpose of the lunch, and depending on the purpose of the lunch, the answer is going to be yes or the answer is going to be no. So the first question that is always asked when it comes to expenses is it wholly, necessarily and exclusively for business purposes? And if none of those can be ticked, then the answer is probably no, you're just going out for lunch because you're hungry. If, however, you are going for lunch and you are away at a training conference or you're doing a viewing trip, then potentially that lunch may actually be subsistence because you're away for business purposes and you need to eat and you can't just go home or take your lunch or be prepared. You're going to have to incur extra expenses to pay for lunch. If you have got a team of people and you are going out for lunch together to have a team meeting, again, this may be completely allowable. If you're taking out your investors or entertaining potential clients or potential landlords that you may want to be buying some property off, now this would be fall under entertaining. So for tax purposes, it's going to be disallowable, but for accounting purposes, it will be an allowable expense in your property company because the company is incurring that expense. You just won't get the tax relief on it. So here we just need to dwell on a couple of different points to see whether or not things are going to be allowable or not allowable. So let's dive into if you're doing a viewing trip. And if you're doing a viewing trip, you may actually be wanting to claim for more than just lunch. You may be looking at breakfast or lunch or dinner depending on where you're going, how long you're going for. So if we assume you're going on a trip, maybe you live in the south and your viewing area is in the north, and yes, you could do it in a day, but it'll be a long day. So you want to go up, stop over to enable you to have a really full day to get what you need out of it, maximise your time. So on that basis, your hotel stop is going to be allowable, your breakfast in the morning, your lunch and potentially your dinner the night that you arrive and maybe the night that you're leaving, depending on timings of day. So on those occasions, this is all going to be treated as subsistence because you're out, you're about, you're doing things for the business's purpose. And the main thing I would say there is make sure you keep all of your receipts for all of the meals that you do have. So this means going on a viewing trip, if you're going for the day, then going for lunch is potentially an allowable expense. And you need to make sure you keep your receipts and put that through on an expense claim form if you are not paying with the business's card. If you need any more information on expense claims, then do check out the video on the expense claim forms and how they fit together. If there is something you're going for lunch with your team, so it may be you and your partner are both the directors and you need to have a bit of a business planning session, then potentially going out for lunch for an annual event may fall into play, or it may be a quarterly team meeting that you are having. Some of these sorts of expenses are going to be allowable. To say they're all allowable in this video would probably be an over-exaggeration. These just need to be assessed on who is attending, what is the purpose of the meeting. If you're going out for your Christmas lunch, which I do encourage all property company businesses to have, make sure you go and have your Christmas lunch or your Christmas dinner or your summer treat event, but you've got £150 per person that is an allowable expense through the business as staff annual events, treats in essence. So do make sure you're taking advantage of that each year, at once or twice a year, depending how much you're spending when you go out for your lunch, your dinner. But there is definitely an allowable expense as long as you're not going over the 150 per employee. Now, going for lunch with an investor, another business property person, you might be going for networking purposes, you may be meeting potential landlords that you want to buy their portfolios or buy properties or invest with. All of these would be classified under entertaining, and entertaining is not allowable for tax purposes. So for anything like that, I would be suggesting, yes, you can put them through your limited company because they are a company expense. However, just monitor the expense that you are incurring, because you're not going to be getting tax relief. It's not going to be reducing your corporation tax bill. So on that basis, you just need to manage those costs. You don't want to be going for 5-star dinners every week to find that you've spent thousands upon thousands and none of it's allowable for tax. But obviously, if that's the person you're courting, to use a olden days phrase, then potentially it may be their expectation, and that's what you need to do to get kind of the handshake if they're going to be investing with your business, or whether it's the way to seal the deal with the landlord to kind of take them out for a nice meal, to have that discussion, and then you are looking at buying their portfolio from them. So there's a whole host of different reasons or options that you may be going, but the key thing is just be aware that those costs can go through the company, but you're not going to get the tax relief. So it's just a bit of a managing the expectations there, rather than finding at the end of the year you're not going to be able to claim them, and if you'd have known, you wouldn't have quite spent so much on some of those fancy dinners. In terms of how you should be paying for these expenses, ideally I'd say pay with your business card. However, I do appreciate that a lot of us will put it on our credit card to get maybe a few of those points. So the key thing is that if you are paying by credit card, make sure you keep your receipts. What you'll then need to do is keep all the receipts for any of those lunches or dinners or anything that would fit in that you need to be claiming back from the company, and then you can fill in an expense claim form. When you fill in an expense claim form, you'll give that probably back to yourself because you are the business, as well as being the employee of the business or the director of the business. But then you'll keep hold of that expense claim form as the evidence that that expense has been paid, with the receipts of those expenses. Check out the expense claim video, which will go into the full detail of what is included in an expense claim form and all of those sorts of things. But you need to keep copies of your receipts and then do your expense claim form. I tend to suggest monthly, just from an admin point of view. It's a bit easier doing it on that route rather than trying to do it daily or weekly. For anything that is allowable for tax purposes, this will go through your company accounts, and having put all those expenses through, you'll see a code which is either travelling and subsistence or something like subsistence for those that are allowable, and you'll see entertaining, which will get disallowed in the tax computation. So everything will get formed into your company accounts, and then when the tax is calculated, things will be left to go through as normal, or if there is anything that's disallowable, such as the entertaining side of things, then this will all be brought back in so that you don't get tax relief on in the corporation tax calculation. The tax will then be calculated at the normal 19 or 25% or somewhere in between to calculate how much tax is due. As you can see, going for lunch seems like a simple can I claim for going for lunch, and unfortunately the answer is a little more questionable of whether it is or not. The key thing to help make any decisions, I would say, for you and for your accountant is to make sure you keep notes, you keep receipts, and you keep information. So if you are going for lunch with different individuals, you can keep track of, well, who did you go for lunch with? How much was it? What was the intention? What was the purpose of the lunch? Because depending on those will have an impact on what the tax treatment is. So don't just completely disregard and say, oh, I can't claim anything on it. But I'd just say you need to keep the notes of who it was you were going for lunch with to ensure that it gives as much information to make the right decision when those accounts are being collated, to hopefully help reduce your tax bill where possible with the lunches that are allowable for tax purposes. Hopefully today you've discovered exactly the reasons why going for lunch may be tax allowable. If you have any questions, then please do leave a comment. Please like the video and do subscribe to the channel. And let's make tax less taxing.